Hi, my name's Brendan Malone and you're listening to The Edge of Reason, the podcast which aims to provide insightful commentary about important issues without taking all day about it. Over the weekend, Barbara Sumner Burstyn, a filmmaker, posted some pretty vile, well, I think they're pretty vile and heinous comments on Facebook about Lance Corporal Jacinda Baker, who was killed last week while on active duty for New Zealand serving in Afghanistan. Here are the comments she made. Oh, so fallen soldier Jacinda Baker liked boxing and baking. Did they forget she also liked invading countries we're not at war with, killing innocent people, and had no moral compass? She 100% does not deserve our respect for her flawed choices. We are not at war. We are helping America invade another country for their oil. No more than that. Go to war, expect to be killed. You can't have it both ways. Oh, nice little career with the military and shock horror when you get blown up. Now, I don't really want to say too much more about her comments because I think enough people have said that publicly already, apart from to say, as I said, that they're vile, obscene, they're poorly timed, and they don't even address the person they should be addressing. Obviously, she's got a problem with us being in Afghanistan. That problem is a problem she needs to take up with the politicians, with our Prime Minister, and the people who actually make the decisions, the command decisions to send soldiers over there, not the soldiers themselves. And obviously, the comments are a complete fabrication. Jacinda Baker wasn't there to kill innocent people. She wasn't there to invade another country, and I think it was completely wrong to say what she said in these comments. I don't want to focus on the comments specifically, but what I do want to focus on is what a bit of a problem that they highlight, and I think this is one of the top 5 problems that is facing our culture presently in regards to internet usage. Next week, I'm going to have a blog post where I'm going to unpack as quickly as I can next week these 5 problems that I think are pressing in relation to internet usage that we need to address as a culture and we need to do something about. But today, I want to look at this one particular problem out of the 5, and that is the problem of a lack of self-censorship that is happening in regards to media, to internet usage. Why is this happening? Well, I think partly it's because of the anonymity and the power, if you like, of what the internet offers us. For the first time ever in our history, thanks to the internet, we now have the ability to literally take our thoughts, to broadcast our thoughts uncensored, and so that anybody, anywhere in the world who has internet access can view what is on your mind. We've never before had that kind of power. The closest we've come is probably live TV or live radio, but even then, there were producers and people there were gatekeepers who stood in the way. There's a delay between when something's broadcast and when it actually gets to a television, so often they could stop you partway through if you began to go off track and get very negative. And thirdly, I think once you begin to speak your thoughts out and you know that people are watching you, which is what happens with live TV or live radio, they're listening to you, then you tend to be a bit more cautious about what you're saying. I think this is one of the reasons why you have such a big problem with internet bullying, and not just in this country, but in where the internet is active, particularly most places in the West. Why do we have this problem? I think it's because we've got a lot of people who aren't able to see the person they're commenting to, they're talking about. They are not able to gauge their reactions as they write their thoughts down and instantly send them out around the globe. They're not seeing the victim of their rage. They're not seeing their body language, their facial expressions, perhaps the look in their eyes, or even if tears begin to well up as we cross the line and say things that are really quite hurtful. And in a normal situation, if we were sitting down face to face with someone, or they're in the room, or we knew that they were there, and our mind has made this connection, this person, there are human persons here who are going to hear what I'm saying, then we tend to pull back and we tend to use a bit more tact in what we say. But when you're sitting at a computer screen, it's just you and a screen and a whole lot of pixels, and you can type whatever's on your mind and instantly hit send and out it goes. I think there's a problem that we've started to fall into, and we haven't had the proper self-censorship that we need. We've just sort of, this new technology has sprung up. We haven't quite got our, if you like, our moral compass around how to use this technology as best as we probably should in that regard. So what we do is we just put our thoughts out there and often don't think before we hit send. What can we do about this problem? What are we to do about this issue? Well, I think that there's a couple of things. Number one, I don't think it's something you can actually legislate for. So there's no point in even talking about legislation or banning the internet, because the internet's a good thing. It does lots of good things. It's a great tool. The fact that I'm on it now, podcasting, tells you that I think it's a good tool and it's got many positive uses. But what we do need to do, I think, in this particular situation is I think we need to become a lot better at self-censorship. This is about personal responsibility here. Personal responsibility. People often talk about the right to freedom of expression, the right to freedom of speech, but very rarely do you hear people talking about, in relation to the right to freedom of speech, the responsibility and the obligation to speak responsibly, if you like, to speak in a way that is reasoned, to speak charitably when you are presenting and expressing your views and opinions. And I think this is what we need more of. We need more of that self-censorship where we stop and we say, okay, before I hit send or before I hit post update or whatever it is, I'm writing a status update or I'm about to send an email or I'm about to write a blog post, particularly if it's something I'm passionate about or that it really has angered me and I want to comment on it, maybe the best idea is to go away and come back half an hour later before you even start writing what you're going to write. Then once you've written it out, sleep on it. Or maybe go away and come back again another half an hour later and look at what you've said again and say to you and ask yourself, is this really the most reasoned way to actually put my opinion across? Is this my putting my view out there in this way? Is it going to hurt people? Is it uncharitable? Is what I am about to say simply going to cause hurt and damage to people, or is it adding something positive? Or even, it doesn't have to be necessarily something deep and meaningful. It could be something lighthearted, but is there something positive in what I'm about to say over the internet? So self-censorship, I think, has got to be the first part of it. And I think that's what happened. Barbara Sumner Burstyn, she didn't self-censor. In fact, her comments come across, when you read them, they're not particularly well worded. And when you read these comments, they come across as if someone who was like tired or late at night or had a couple of drinks and then it just opened up. And without thinking, without any self-censorship, without any control, had just spewed forth whatever she was thinking and probably at her most angriest by the sounds of it. And this is the end result of it. Now, this incident by Barbara Sumner Burstyn is not an isolated incident. This kind of conduct is becoming more and more prevalent and more common in internet forums, online discussions, blog posts, you name it. This sort of unreasoned, unreasonable, and very, what I would say, irrational and even obscene at times comment is becoming a mainstay of internet conversation, if you like, and it actually is destroying and harming our ability to converse and connect with one another, because we're no longer listening, we're no longer being reasoned in our discussions, we are simply doing the equivalent of using pixels to yell obscenities at each other. And even if you're not put the cap locks on and you're not necessarily, calling people names, when you stop listening and you simply just force your opinion upon others, you're no longer engaged in any sort of dialogue or reasoned discussion, despite the fact that the internet is a very powerful tool that opens up the possibility for us to engage in that sort of dialogue in a very free and open way. Sadly, what we've started to do is go to a default position in a lot of situations where we simply close down and we're doing nothing more, as I said, than the conversational equivalent of basically yelling and abusing each other. The other thing I think that needs to be done is, and this is, once again, no legislation can legislate, this is all about personal responsibility. I think if you're somebody who runs a blog or a chat room or an internet forum or a thread or anything like that, people like us have an obligation to make sure that we're keeping control of those conversations that are going on in there. And when people start to cross the line into obscenities, into abusing other people, into making these kind of vitriolic and nasty comments, that's where we have to step in and say, right, enough is enough. You can express your opinions, you can express your views, but once you start moving into abuse, once you start becoming unreasoned in the way that you are presenting, you can have an opinion that I disagree with, but if you become unreasonable in the way you present that opinion, then I think us, internet moderators have an obligation to step in and say, hey, you either need to start being more reasonable or get out of this chat room. Look, it's a big issue, and as I said, next week we're going to explore the other 4 issues that I think are really pressing things in relation to internet usage. But I think if we want to get the most out of the internet and we don't want to see reason, discussion, debate and dialogue and conversation in our culture just go down the gurgler over the next decade or two, then I think this is where we need to start making a difference, and we need to become better at self-censoring and controlling the sort of content and the way we say what we want to say when we get on the internet. Thanks for tuning into this edition of the podcast. I'll see you next time on The Edge of Reason.